Good morning. Welcome back to yet another section of Indian writing in English literature. Today we are going to start the 7th chapter. It's a speech by Jawaharlal Nehru. The title of the speech is A Tryst with Destiny. I think there is no need to give an introduction about Jawaharlal Nehru because you are very familiar with Jawaharlal Nehru. Anyway, let us start with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was born in Allahabad on November 14, 1889. He received his early education at home under private tutors. His father was a renowned lawyer. A series of English governors and tutors educated Nehru at home until he was 16. He continued his education in England, first at the Harrow School and then at Trinity College, Cambridge, where he earned an honours degree in natural science. He later studied law at the Inner Temple in London before returning home to India in 1912 and practicing law for several years. 4 years later, Nehru married Kamala Kaul. Their only child, Indira Priyadarshini, was born in 1917. Like her father, Indira would later serve as Prime Minister of India under her married name Indira Gandhi. A family of high achievers, one of Nehru's sisters, Vijayalakshmi Pandit, later became the first woman president of the UN General Assembly. We can come back to 1912. He was later called to the bar from Inner Temple. He returned to India in 1912 and plunged straight into politics. Even as a student, he had been interested in the struggle of all nations who suffered under foreign domination. He took keen interest in the Sinn Féin movement in Ireland. In India, he was inevitably drawn into the struggle for independence. So we can easily understand as a student, he had been interested in the struggle. That's why he took keen interest in the Sinn Féin movement in Ireland. In 1912, he attended Bankipore Congress as a delegate and became secretary of the Home Rule League, Allahabad in 1919. In 1916, he had his first meeting with Mahatma Gandhi and felt immensely inspired by him. It happened in 1916. He organized the first Kisan March in Pratapgarh district of Uttar Pradesh in 1920. He was twice imprisoned in connection with the non-cooperation movement of 1920 to 22. Pandit Nehru became the General Secretary of the All Indian Congress Committee in September 1923. He toured Italy, Switzerland, England, Belgium, Germany and Russia in 1926. In Belgium, he attended the Congress of Oppressed Nationalities in Brussels as an official delegate of the Indian National Congress. He also attended the 10th anniversary celebrations of the October Socialist Revolution in Moscow in 1927. Earlier in 1926, at the Madras Congress, Nehru had been instrumental in committing the Congress to the goal of independence. While leading a procession against the Simon Commission, he was lathi charged in Lucknow in 1928. On August 29, 1928, he attended the All-Party Congress and was one of the signatories to the Nehru Report on Indian constitutional reform named after his father Shri Motilal Nehru. The same year, he also founded the Independence for India League, which advocated complete severance of the British connection with India, and became its general secretary. In 1929, Pandit Nehru was elected president of the Lahore session of the Indian National Congress, where complete independence for the country was adopted as the goal. He was imprisoned several times during 1930 to 35 in connection with the Salt Satyagraha and other movements launched by the Congress. He completed his autobiography in Almora jail on February 14, 1935. So it's very important. Actually, he completed his autobiography in Almora jail. It happened on February 14, 1935. After release, he flew to Switzerland to see his ailing wife and visited London in February-March 1936. He also visited Spain in July 1938 when the country was in the throes of civil war. Just before the outbreak of the Second World War, he visited China too. On October 31st, 1940, Pandit Nehru was arrested for offering individual satyagraha to protest against India's forced participation in war. He was released along with the other leaders in December 1941. On August 7, 1942, Pandit Nehru moved the historic Quit India resolution at the AICC session in Mumbai. On August 8, 1942, he was arrested along with other leaders and taken to Ahmednagar Fort. This was his longest and also his last detention. In all, he suffered imprisonment 9 times. After his release in January 1945, he organized legal defense for those officers and men of the INA charged with treason. In March 1946, Pandit Nehru toured Southeast Asia. He was elected President of the Congress for the 4th time on July 6, 1946 and again for 3 more terms from 1951 to 1954. Then I want to speak about how he entered in politics in detail. In 1919, while travelling on a train, Nehru overheard British Brigadier General Dyer gloating over the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. The massacre, also known as the massacre of Amritsar, was an incident in which 379 people were killed and at least 1,200 wounded when the British military stationed there continuously fired for 10 minutes on a crowd of unarmed Indians. Upon hearing Dyer's words, Nehru vowed to fight the British. The incident changed the course of his life. This period in Indian history was marked by a wave of nationalist activity and governmental repression. Nehru joined the Indian National Congress, one of India's 2 major political parties. Nehru was deeply influenced by the party's leader, Gandhi. It was Gandhi's insistence on action to bring about change and greater autonomy from the British that sparked Nehru's interest the most. The British didn't give in easily to Indian demands for freedom, and in late 1921, the Congress Party's central leaders and workers were banned from operating in some provinces. Nehru went to prison for the first time as the ban took effect. Over the next 24 years, he was to serve a total of 9 sentences, adding up to more than 9 years in jail. Always leaning to the left politically, Nehru studied Marxism while imprisoned. Though he found himself interested in the philosophy but repelled by some of its methods. From then on, the backdrop of Nehru's economic thinking was Marxist, adjusted as necessary to Indian conditions. Then I want to speak about the marching toward Indian independence. In 1928, after years of struggle on behalf of Indian emancipation, Nehru was named President of the Indian National Congress. The next year, Nehru led the historic session at Lahore that proclaimed complete independence as India's political goal. November 1930 saw the start of the Round Table Conferences, which convened in London and hosted British and Indian officials working toward a plan of eventual independence. After his father's death in 1931, Nehru became more embedded in the workings of the Congress Party and became closer to Gandhi, attending the signing of the Gandhi-Irvine Pact. The British agreed to free all political prisoners, and Gandhi agreed to end the civil disobedience movement he had been coordinating for years. Unfortunately, the pact did not instantly usher in a peaceful climate in British-controlled India, and both Nehru and Gandhi were jailed in early 1932 on charges of attempting to mount another civil disobedience movement. Neither man attended the third round table conference. The third and final conference did, however, result in the Government of Indian Act of 1935, giving the Indian provinces a system of autonomous government in which elections would be held to new provincial leaders. By the time the 1935 Act was signed into law, Indians began to see Nehru as the natural heir to Gandhi, who didn't designate Nehru as his political successor until the early 1940s. Gandhi said in January 1941, "Had differences from the time we became co-workers, and yet I have said for some years and say so now that Jawaharlal Nehru will be my successor." It happened in January 1941. So definitely it is very important we should speak about World War II in brief. At the outbreak of World War II in September 1939, British Viceroy Lord Linlithgow committed India to the war effort without consulting the now autonomous provincial ministries. In response, the Congress Party withdrew its representatives from the provinces, and Gandhi staged a limited civil disobedience movement in which he and Nehru were jailed yet again. Nehru spent a little over a year in jail and was released with other Congress prisoners 3 days before Pearl Harbor was bombed by the Japanese. When Japanese troops soon moved near the borders of India in the spring of 1942, the British government decided to enlist India to combat this new threat. But Gandhi, who still essentially had the reins of the movement, would accept nothing less than independence and called on the British to leave India. Nehru reluctantly joined Gandhi in his hardline stance, and the pair were again arrested and jailed, this time for nearly 3 years. By 1947, within 2 years of Nehru's release, simmering animosity had reached a fever pitch between the Congress Party and the Muslim League, who had always wanted more power in a free India. The last British Viceroy, Louis Mountbatten, was charged with finalizing the British roadmap for withdrawal with a plan for a unified India. Despite his reservations, Nehru acquiesced to Mountbatten and the Muslim League's plan to divide India, and in August 1947, Pakistan was created. The new country, Muslim and India predominantly Hindu. The British withdrew and Nehru became independent India's first Prime Minister. So it's very important, you should have a thorough knowledge about the partition of India. Then I want to speak about the first Prime Minister of independent India. The importance of Nehru in the context of Indian history can be distilled to the following points. He imparted modern values and thought, stressed secularism, insisted upon the basic unity of India, and in the face of ethnic and religious diversity, carried India into the modern age of scientific innovation and technical progress. He also prompted social concern for the marginalized and poor and respect for democratic values. These are very important points relating Nehru as a Prime Minister. Nehru was especially proud to reform the antiquated Hindu civil code. Finally, Hindu widows could enjoy equality with men in matters of inheritance and property. Nehru also changed Hindu law to criminalize caste discrimination. In addition to that, he also worked for Hindu civil code, and he tried to make the Hindu law to criminalize caste discrimination. Nehru's administration established many Indian institutions of higher learning, including the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, the Indian Institutes of Technology, and the National Institutes of Technology, and guaranteed in his 5-year plans free and compulsory primary education to all of India's children. That is the another greatest vision of Jawaharlal Nehru, and he succeeded in it. He gave importance to the technology and science. At the same time, he gave free and compulsory primary education to all India's children. Okay, then we are moving to next topic, that it is national security and international policy. The Kashmir region, which was claimed by both India and Pakistan, was a perennial problem throughout Nehru's leadership, and his cautious efforts to settle the dispute ultimately failed, resulting in Pakistan making an unsuccessful attempt to seize Kashmir by force in 1948. The region has remained in dispute into the 21st century. Internationally, starting in the late 1940s, both the United States and the USSR began seeking out India as an ally in the Cold War. But Nehru led efforts toward a non-alignment policy by which India and other nations wouldn't feel the need to tie themselves to either dwelling country to thrive. To this end, Nehru co-founded the Non-Aligned Movement of nations professing neutrality. Recognizing the People's Republic of China soon after its founding and as a strong supporter of the United Nations, Nehru argued for China's inclusion in the UN and sought to establish warm and friendly relations with the neighboring country. His pacifist and inclusive policies with respect to China came undone when border disputes led to the Sino-Indian War in 1962, which ended when China declared a ceasefire on November 20, 1962 and announced its withdrawal from the disputed area in the Himalayas. Then I want to speak about a legacy. Nehru's 4 pillars of domestic policies were democracy, socialism, unity and secularism, and he largely succeeded in maintaining a strong foundation of all 4 during his tenure as president. While serving his country, he enjoyed iconic status and was widely admired internationally for his idealism and statesmanship. His birthday, November 14th, is celebrated in India as Bal Divas, that means Children's Day, in recognition of his lifelong passion and work on behalf of children and young people. Nehru was an Indian nationalist leader and statesman who became the first Prime Minister of independent India in 1947. By the end of World War II, Nehru was recognized as Gandhi's successor. He played a central role in the negotiations over Indian independence. He opposed the Muslim League's insistence on the division of India on the basis of religion. Louis Mountbatten, the last British Viceroy, advocated the division as the fastest and most workable solution, and Nehru reluctantly agreed. On 15th August 1947, Nehru became the first Prime Minister of independent India. He held the post until his death in 1964. He implemented moderate socialist economic reforms and committed India to a policy of industrialization. Nehru also served as Foreign Minister of India. In October 1947, he faced conflict with Pakistan over the state of Kashmir, which was disputed at independence. Nehru sent troops into the state to support India's claim. A United Nations ceasefire was negotiated, but Kashmir remains deeply unstable to this day. Against the background of the Cold War, Nehru developed a policy of positive neutrality for India. He became one of his spokesmen for the non-aligned countries of Africa and Asia, many of which were former colonies that wanted to avoid dependence on any major power. Despite efforts at cooperation by both countries, Indian-Chinese border disputes escalated into war in 1962 and Indian forces were decisively beaten. This had a significant impact on Nehru's declining health. He died on 27 May 1964. India's first and longest serving Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, was a man of vision. Having participated in the long struggle for freedom from the British, Nehru fondly called Pandit Nehru, a reference to his Kashmiri Pandit community roots, was a firm believer in nation building as he understood that the young Indian nation had a tryst with destiny. A foreign educated barrister and a close confidant of Mahatma Gandhi, he came as close as anyone has or ever will to becoming the people's prince. He was Mahatma Gandhi's chosen political heir and Free India's first elected Prime Minister. After the death of Vallabhbhai Patel in 1950, he towered amongst his colleagues in the Congress. His vision of an India fired by educational institutions, steel plants, and powered by dams was widely shared. He was seen as a brave man who fought, as a selfless man who had endured years in jail to win freedom, and above all as a visionary. His appeal cut across the conventionally opposed categories of low caste and high caste and was undoubtedly the darling of the masses. Nehru realized that the country, cobbled together from a loose confederation of princely states that both owed their allegiance to the British as well as opposed them, needed to work hard to unleash its potential and energy into nationalized channel that would help build India as a truly democratic nation where every citizen matters. Nehru's first commitment was to make India a self-sufficient economy. As a result, he set up temples of modern learning and giant public sector industries that catered to the needs of a growing nation and its people. His efforts to create a scientific temple can be seen from his zeal to establish higher centers of learning. Many Indians believe that the credit for India being a vibrant democracy, an industrial powerhouse, a knowledge partner, a globally respected military power, and a technology and a space innovator should go to Nehru. That he had laid strong foundations upon which the institutions built themselves with strong and focused targets. To understand Nehru better, one needs to see his other side, where he inspires children or the future citizens, as he called them. Hailed as Chacha, it means uncle, Nehru by children, his birthday on November 14th is celebrated as Children's Day. Looking back, we can see that Nehru was at a juncture where he fought the very people who had empowered him with education. His perfect sense of right and wrong and his Indian upbringing, despite a Western education, gave him the opportunity to join and rise up the ranks of the Congress party in its freedom struggle. After he became the Prime Minister, he maintained equal distance from both the superpowers, America and the Soviet Union, without fear or favor, even as he charted a non-aligned course for the country based on the policy of Panchashil. A socialist at heart, he signed the Panchashil Agreement between China and India that was to serve as the 5 guiding principles of the relationship between these two sovereign nations. Not surprisingly, he felt betrayed when the Chinese attacked India, even as he spoke about Hindi Chinese bye-bye. An underprepared Indian army took on waves of Chinese soldiers, fought valiantly and paid a heavy price. Nehru's meticulous nurturing of India's democracy during its troubled birth and childhood stands out. Scholars are convinced that democracies cannot be established at low levels of income. Thus, India's democratic longevity is unique. It is perhaps due to the country having a popular anti-colonial movement. More importantly, Nehru, though all-powerful, did not fritter away pre-independence legitimacy. During the 17 years he was the Prime Minister, Nehru strode the Indian political stage like a colossus. But he never imposed his political will and always had an ear for what others had to say. Though not in favor of linguistic states, he adhered to popular wishes. He did not choose chief ministers. But allowed the party organization at the state level to elect their leaders. When courts challenged his land reform programs, instead of being critical of the judges, he chose to undertake constitutional amendments. In 1952, during Free India's first general elections, nearly 175 million voted. As 3/4 of citizens were illiterate, candidates were given symbols such as bicycles, lanterns, lamps, animals, flowers, and symbols of everyday usage. It was a 6-month process where those deputed for election work rode camels, took boats, and even trekked to remote corners. The general elections in 1957 and 1962 deepened the legitimacy of the electoral process on the Indian consciousness. Nehru helped to ensure the deep rooting of fundamental values in the Indian polity and tried to work out ways in which these could be expressed. His most positive influence and what he valued most of all was the attempted construction of a plural, open, and democratic polity working for change in the lives of all citizens. He used to speak of India as a composite nation and of the groundbreaking experiment of trying to achieve socio-economic change by democratic process and consent, in contrast to state-directed revolution with its risk of profound violence. So I think all of you got a clear picture about Jawaharlal Nehru, his personal life, his political endearing, and how he was acted as a Prime Minister. So all these points we already discussed in detail. So I think it will be helpful to understand the speech of Jawaharlal Nehru. So I think it's enough for today's class. The next class we will start the speech of Nehru. Thank you.